So, good morning and welcome to Political No Brainer, the podcast where we move past winner takes all politics and into real conversation. I'm Jeff Rabinowitz. I'm with Thaneder. I'm sorry. And I'm excited to be here. Neil is the executive director of Michigan's Campaign Finance Network, a nonpartisan, nonprofit fiercely committed to reducing the influence of dark money. This is huge. And this is something I really want to talk about. You know, and not necessarily dark money, but I still remember the day when President Obama was doing his State of the Union talking about the new Citizens United, the newly passed, I guess you will say, by the Supreme Court Citizens United ruling.
Yeah.
And not only did he talk about it, which is generally unusual for a president to talk about his United States Supreme Court ruling, but then Supreme Court Justice Daniel Alito either mouth the words bullshit or simply not true or something, but it was definitely caught on tape. And nonetheless, it is true. There is this issue of now even corporate America and really anywhere, any corporate in the world can spend all sorts of money on campaigns. And I just want to preface for my audience what I consider Citizens United. When a candidate says, I'm Joe Biden, I approve this message, it's not funded by the rulings of Citizens United. When you don't hear that at the end of the ruling, at the end of the ad, if you will, it is fun. It is somehow funded by Citizens United. So I guess I don't know. Would you equate that with dark money, or how would you say? And what would you call dark money?
Yeah, so dark money is everything that's going outside of the campaign contribution system or the tracked pack system where you know who is spending the money. And what we're seeing now is the direct spending is now in some cases 1/10 or less of the indirect spending in an election, right? So you might have a congressional race where each candidate raises $1 million, which is already a huge amount. But then there's $10 million in outside money coming on either side for or against them. And so who's really kind of deciding these elections are not necessarily the candidates or even the people in those districts, because a lot of this money is coming from out of the district, out of the state. That money is what's driving a lot of the ads and a lot of the messaging in these races.
Right, and I guess you could say messaging's everything, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter anymore what the candidate has to say. It's how he wins.
There's some candidates that are doing a better job of going direct, right? So I think podcasts are a great example of this, right? If you can even better like create your own YouTube channel, create your own email newsletter, right? Like reach your own audience directly, like a lot of people are natively online are starting to do now. I think politicians should do a lot more of that, and I think that is a potential future solution to this problem is the next generation of politicians growing up and kind of and gaining their audience online and gaining their audience directly, right? I think the more direct that the audience had that connection with the politician, the better. As something that I talk about in my book, Positive Politics, all the time, is the more direct and independent you can be as a politician, that's actually how you can potentially win even against these large amounts of money. But it takes a large amount of people to be a large amount of money in a lot of these cases. And so you're going to see the people who are best at organizing and the best at rallying a group of people in person and online, I think have a lot of potential in the next generation of politicians.
So, author of Politics. I want to
Yeah,
hear about that. I want to read that. I'm going to read that. I'm going to get the book. I'm
absolutely.
excited about that
Thank you.
because that could virtually change everything. I sort of get excited when certain
Yeah,
things come up. That could virtually change everything, right?
yeah,
So, like you said, podcasts are one thing where I think Kamala Harris just said, "I wish we would have done the Joe Rogan podcast." And I'm not
yeah.
pumping my own podcast. But I mean, I almost think like sometimes politicians would be scared to do my podcast. I do ask the difficult questions. I do throw out real examples of their actions, not necessarily their answers on the podcast.
Yeah.
But tell me more about the book. Tell me about how we can, because kids are more. If anything came out of this whole Donald Trump thing, is the fact that young people are very engaged in politics, and I give him 100% credit for that. But
Yeah.
tell me, that's a lot to unpack that I just said, but jump right in.
Yeah, I feel like in many ways we feel like negativity is winning in politics now. But we also there's a better answer that could be out there, right? And so I think fake positivity might be losing to loud negativity right now, but there's a better way, and I think it's called positive politics. And so I wrote this book partially about my story in the last 10 years of volunteering in politics, then helping my dad, who's an immigrant entrepreneur, run for governor, state rep, in U.S. Congress, finding these races and finding a different way to run from outside of the normal two-party system. And then starting to help some of my friends in Y Combinator, startup founders, ambitious optimists, get into politics. Through all these processes, I keep finding who I call these ambitious optimists, these people who want to make the world a better place and don't necessarily know how to do it. You find a lot of them in startups, right? Like they want to build a company and use that to make the world a better place. But often that specific startup, you get very lost in kind of the day-to-day of making money and different things. And you don't necessarily always can spend all day, every day solving that mission. And so what I found increasingly is that the way to make the biggest change was by picking a specific issue and running with it in politics. And so uh, corruption is a classic example of that. It's very easy to get angry about dark money and corruption in politics, and either complain about it or try to advocate for specific candidates who might fight dark money. There's also a direct way to solve that problem. It's attacking, actually investigating the dark money itself, it's bringing it to light, actually telling the story of how, you know, a $20 million government grant actually ended up not providing any benefit to the people it was supposed to, and instead paid a $500,000 plus salary to one of the partners. Right? Those are the types of telling those stories allow you to change public opinion and then change politics. And so I encourage anyone who wants to change the world and make the world a better place to get into politics. And I think one important thing that positive politics argues is that getting into politics does not just mean running for office, right? I think that's like the thing we have in our head is this like, oh, if I want to be in politics, I got to run for office and then I got to be public and I got to raise all this money and I could never do that, right? And I think a lot of people talk themselves out of politics in that way. And I want people to think about getting into politics as not just running for office, but getting into a specific issue, taking an issue like corruption and running with it for 1, 2, 3, 4 years and seeing how far you get, right? Taking an issue like if healthcare is a big issue for you, taking an issue like universal healthcare and running with it for 1, 2, 3, 4 years, you might get a lot further than even if you did 5 to 10 years at a healthcare startup. And so I tell all these stories, not just from mine and my family's stories, but stories of famous and not famous people all around the country who have picked up an issue and run with it and changed politics and changed the world. One of my favorite stories is Gregory Watson was a 19-year-old student at the University of Texas about 30 years ago. And he writes a paper saying that U.S. congressmen should not get a pay raise until after the next election, so that they have to get reelected before they make more money, right? And he got a C on the paper, right? And he thought it wasn't fair. And so he was like, was actually a proposed amendment in like the 1800s, right? It was like the original founding fathers actually had this idea. They just never passed it. He's like, I'm going to get it done. I'm going to pass it. And so he spent 10 years, and by the time he was 29, like the 27th Amendment at the US Constitution is this. Like it's the Congressional Pay Amendment where you have to get reelected to get a pay raise. And he got it done. And actually the University of Texas like retroactively gave him an A plus on that class. They like changed his grade later. And so that stories like that, a bunch of stories like that are in the book, are just saying like anyone can just like pick up a specific issue and run with it. And like you can change the Constitution. If you really put your mind to it, you can do a lot of great things in politics.
Well, that's a great story. It's funny because and this just again makes me want to read your book even more. So I'm going to get your book.
Awesome.
Because it's funny because I ran for the U.S. House of Representatives. It's entirely too big for a first run. It's entirely too big. But
Sure.
I remember the first thing I said, and I remember the reaction, and then I remember saying I'm sticking to it. I said I don't raise money, I raise awareness. And then everybody thought I was an idiot, right? So and they were right. I wasn't. It was naive, right? It wasn't total stupidity. It was naive though, and I literally went to some education sessions for politicians, and they were all basically political advisors that said, in order to hire me, you've got to pay this, and you're going to need in U.S. House of Representatives generally, you need to raise $1 million and start with
Yeah.
50,000. And so I started a podcast, and I
Mhm.
have really met so many interesting people like yourself that have said so many people that are going to change America, that are going to change the way politicians do business. What's very interesting about the thing you just said about was the young man that wrote that paper.
Mhm.
It goes so far as Chief Justice John Roberts of the Supreme Court typically writes in his annual report, why does the Congress get automatic pay raises and we have to request a pay raise every
Mhm.
year? And they want that he basically is writing that because he wants his pay raises auto pay raised,
Yeah.
and they're still not. So I
Yeah.
don't necessarily, for the simple reason, I don't see any Supreme Court justice leaving for the private sector, so there's no need to change that. It doesn't. But the truth is, if you're going to give, but you are holding them accountable by saying at least if you get reelected, you get the pay raise. But
Yeah.
and do I agree with the Supreme Court getting auto pay raises? Sure, I don't necessarily disagree with it, but it won't have any different outcome. Nobody's really left the Supreme Court for the private sector, so
Yeah.
that's a great story. And then the other things I said is now my next thing is that I'm not kidding. I'm literally thinking about putting up a website where I'm going to run for president. My donate website is going to have 5 charities to donate to because I don't
Mhm.
want to raise money.
No.
And one of them at the top of my list is going to be St. Jude's Children's Hospital. That because when you think of all the money that's raised, the billions and billions of dollars that was raised just in the last presidential election, couldn't that money have been spent better otherwise?
That's an interesting challenge. If anything, I go both ways on this. I definitely agree with that. A lot of the money you could try to find, use the same avenue as political funding and use it and turn some of that money towards nonprofit funding. I'm very flexible with how you solve the problems, right? It's like I've uh, founded 3 startups, I've led 3 nonprofits, helped 4 campaigns. Like I think politics, startups, nonprofits are some of the best ways to solve these problems. And so you could say like maybe some of the money from politics should go to nonprofits, right? And sometimes it's like money gets wasted on nonprofits and it could be better spent in politics or in startups, right? And so I think there's always uh, and there's also different problems have different solutions. All right. And so I think like a problem like healthcare or like St. Jude's, right, is like is a problem that maybe a startup can't solve, right? It's like it almost has to be a nonprofit or a government has to solve that, or some combination of it. And so I think I try to be really flexible around that. But I would say one cool thing that if you have that's like one maybe thing to think about is like another way to think about the issues that you want to solve like if you kind of thought through like if I ran for president, what issues would I try to solve? You might pick those and you could try to solve them anyways, right? Like that's like another kind of solution to the problem is like, hey, if I was president, I'd want to do uh, universal childcare and universal healthcare. I'd want to fix housing by increase dropping these regulations to make it easier to build housing in these places and then also increase social housing. Like you pick 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of those issues and take a year on them and just run with it and see what you get done. And you might find that you get a lot of that stuff done. Like you could get a universal childcare bill passed in your state in a 1 or 2 year period. And so I think that's something that I try to encourage as much as possible. And as you read the book, you'll hear me encourage you again through the words of the book too, of just like find that like be specific in like if and when you want to run for something what do you want to change? Like, which laws do you want to change? Because you might actually find that before you even get into politics, you can change laws as a citizen. Like, there are ways to change laws as a citizen. Some of them are just by organizing public support. Some of them are media, right? Like, if you tell a great story enough times and you get a big enough audience, you could change the politician's mind and they would vote differently on a bill if enough politicians know that these grants are going to potentially corrupt places, they might vote against them, right? I think the pressure that the public and journalists and journalists includes people who run podcasts, right? Like if you are asking tough questions and telling important stories to the public, you have the power to break some of those stories and influence politicians. And so that's in some ways like instead of being one politician, you could potentially influence 100 politicians if you have a clear voice and a clear issue that you want to solve. And so that's something I'd be really curious to ask you if you've kind of thought through maybe what your one, two, three big issues are in politics. Like, what would you most like to see change in politics?
So I would love to answer that question. That's a great question. So the one thing I would love to see change in politics is healthcare, and not necessarily universal healthcare, right? So the one I always say that the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, first of all, the acronym's wrong. It should be the Available Care Act.
Mhm.
Second of all, um, I would love to see just some acknowledgement that we've gone not necessarily far enough, but let's put the argument aside, right? So you've got this president who wants to decimate the whole system. You've got politicians that want to make it universal health care. And then you start to come to the realization that both parties have some sort of interest to see it fail. Like, for example, Democrats are very interested in universal health care. So if the ACA is cannibalized by this particular administration, their next argument will be universal health care. So just answering that question, education is my second biggest focus,
Mhm.
and not necessarily just more funding. But
Mhm.
I kind of feel like, I work at a theme park, right? And all the time, the most amazing rides go down for rehab just to keep the theme park relevant. But when I look at my Facebook page in my high school, 40 years later, I still see the same building. I
Mhm.
think there's some energy efficient windows that have been installed in the last 40 years. That's the only thing I've seen change. And I
Yeah.
haven't seen the K through 12 education system change at all. And
Yeah.
and I would like to see that. And I've always mentioned the one thing I would like to see is an incentive based sort of life skills curriculum. And the incentive now I'm starting to think more than ever is money towards college. So something that would be incredible is like if we created that system and kids do talk about what they would like to see in politics, and they put together an essay that says what they would do if they were president or what they would do if they ran for office. Like you said, and if they just picked two or three things like I'm about to do and wrote this articulate essay, they would get X amount of dollars towards college. Like in Florida, we have the Bright Futures program where the kids that excel in school get basically a discount on their Florida-based colleges, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's an incredible incentive for kids. My kids are going to have Bright Future scholarships, right?
Yeah.
So I would love to see more of that because when I saw Joe Biden say he's going to waive all the student debt, I was like, I pay, and we have Florida prepaid, so I've already paid both my kids Florida prepaid off. What was the point of
Mhm.
that if now they can just go to school for free? So those are two of the things, two of the biggest issues I would like to see. And then the other thing for a third, because you said one, two, or three, the other thing is, and my biggest focus is children timing out of foster care. And I know this is
Mhm.
very specific, but at the age
Yeah.
of 18, kids time out of foster care and they're thrown to this incredibly complicated world and in not really a nice place either. So I would like to see a big focus on literally building I guess life skills universities where they go to this
Mhm.
college for 4 years and they learn about life and they have dorm parents that
Mhm.
help them understand. So that would be my three biggest focus.
That,
I guess two
I
or
love
three
that.
fall under education.
Yeah, that's awesome. I actually want to focus on the third one because I think the first two, a lot of people are working on it, but I think the third one is one I think you personally are really focused on it and you are passionate about it. And I think that is something that like in politics there could be a very specific bill that might be like in the state of Florida would like potentially not be controversial, would not be partisan, would not, it wouldn't be negative in any way, right? It's like everyone would be on board with getting something done if you had a very clear plan for what that would look like. Maybe it's even using existing resources. Maybe we've got I I'm in Michigan, you're in Florida, right? It's like there might be universities and high schools that are sitting vacant right now that can be repurposed for these right, cases. There might be community colleges that the buildings are for sale right now, and they'd be available and kind of they could just be restarted. The state might even own some of those buildings already, right? And so you might, if you do a little bit of research and you put that together and you say like, hey, this is what I think should be done. Like I think you tell a great story. Maybe, like this, I found a lot it's writing, like writing a 1,000 to 2,000 word like blog post about a topic and telling one or two or three important, like real stories of, foster kids who, actually were doing well until 18. And then as soon as they hit 18, they dropped out of the system and something went wrong. And maybe, one or two of them found their way out but they still want to help and turn around and say, hey, like, let's fix the system so it wasn't so hard for the next generation. If you tell those stories and then you tell a very specific, uh, you know, it's not only going to take this much money and the buildings are already there and the state already owns the buildings, right? Like if you write all that down and like have it in something that's like online and easily shareable with a link, you'd be surprised at how quickly a bill like that can get passed at a state, right? Like, so I think those are things I would absolutely encourage you to do that if you write that. I love actually, like, I write a lot, obviously with the book, but not just the book. I've been writing blog posts like this for about 10 years before I wrote the book. If you write that, send it to me. I love like reading early drafts of that. But the
Oh
more
yeah, I would love
focus
to
you can,
partner on that with you, really,
yeah,
not just give send you the early draft. I mean, I want to write it now. You've got me more enthusiastic than
okay,
ever that I
yeah.
want to take a part in that. So,
Yeah, I think the more you can structure it, that's I think in your own mind, like study it and then write it down. Like the more it can be organized in either like a video or like writing, you can easily send someone a link. It's like this is the idea because then like the one politician who you reach, they can send it to their closest five, and then they might have one or two people on the other party that they work with on simple stuff that they can work with on. Because there's always like most things they don't work together on, but there's a few things that you can go across the aisle. This is the kind of thing that like anyone would go across the aisle for, right? To talk to anyone with. And so the key is that like the more you've organized and thought about it and you're passionate about it and you've got the stories, it's amazing how those stories can change politicians' minds really quickly.
well, that's really funny. You just said across the aisle because my other podcast is the chair across the aisle, right?
Mm,
And a lot of times we go, me and my assistant, me and my partner are always like, should we make this a political no-brainer or should we make this a chair across the aisle
mhm,
podcast? And it's like because when you think about it, just like you said, you are like at the crux. We're all at the crux of so much change and so much that like I didn't even realize what you just said is you can make legislation happen. You don't have to be a lawmaker to make legislation happen. You can be Jeff or you can be Neil and you can make legislation happen. And
yeah,
that's important to me to know that. That's
yeah,
important to me. I'm going to get the word out about the book too that you can do that.
yeah.
And there's so many people that want so much positive to come out of the next. We want a better future for our children.
Mhm,
And it's certainly not going to be what's happening now. It's the gridlock. We want to bring people together, not keep dividing people. So I always tell the story of, and it's sort of metaphorically speaking. So you have Joe Biden, you have um, John McCain, and then there was Ted Kennedy, right? So
mhm,
for 40 some plus years, and I'm just using three senators, I'm not going to get into specific legislation or you watch my back, I'll watch your back. And you had these compromises, right?
mhm,
And then and then these compromises, there was this great thing about these compromises. Republicans wanted military spending, Democrats wanted entitlement programs. They always came across the aisle and worked. Then suddenly came this notion that we can't just keep doing this without paying for it. We've cannibalized the Social Security Fund. We've cannibalized the Postal Service surpluses. There's money, the deficits are climbing, and now the American people are concerned about the deficits. So then came this inflection period where it was Obama. I think it was really the Affordable Care Act where it was just too much for the Republicans to swallow, and then became the gridlock, and then became the absolute, we're never working with these guys again. So
mhm.
how do we get back to that? And that may very well be how we get back to it as Americans, the individuals write policy and start talking about it, start pushing it.
Yeah, I think it has to come from the people and not the parties. I think the parties are have a very specific structure for a reason, right? They are built. There's a book called The Hollow Parties that does a really good job of explaining that for like 200 plus years, these are essentially these like hollow, uh, fundraising organizations. They're just like they're places that have large amounts of money, and they kind of use that money to support their existing candidates, but they don't actually solve their job is not necessarily to solve problems, right? Like their job is to elect candidates. It's like to solve politics, not solve policy necessarily. They do like they have policy recommendations that they make, But that's not really what the parties drive. The policy is driven by people. It's driven by what the polls say are the most popular things that people want right now. That's one of the biggest ways that you get things done in politics, right? Is if you are a politician and 80% of people want a congressional stock trading ban, we're now seeing Congress going and starting to fight some of those issues and actually getting bipartisan again. So I think this is the first time we're seeing even the Epstein files actually was an example of that, where a few Republicans were willing to cross over with the Democrats and create a discharge petition, which is basically saying uh, that even if the speaker, the leader of the majority party, does not want this bill to be voted on, it's still going to get a vote, right? And so that is a clear example that the party leadership is starting to lose power. What needs to replace it is the public organizing itself better, right? It's like if you want a specific issue passed, I think we can often get very it's very easy to attack a person, right? And so I think it's very easy to say like attack Trump or attack Biden or attack Harris or attack kind of whoever is the next leader. You will see the same in 2028, the same kind of fight between two seemingly bad candidates, where I think we're just like, there's just so much negativity put on those figureheads, essentially, right? They're figureheads of a party. And what is actually really the impact, like, is not actually like protesting the president when they make a speech is not necessarily where you're going to get the most impact. You might say take that exact same issue and either take it to your local Congress member, or you might even take it to your state rep or your local city council. And you might find that there's certain of these issues, like foster care, for example, might be a city-state issue, not even a federal issue at all. Right? It's like
Right.
federal government can't even do anything about foster care. Like you have to do it more locally. And so we don't it like doesn't need like we don't need to focus on the presidential election at all. Like if we want to if we want to help foster kids, like it's a local state issue. What we do and like is there going to be like a special like scholarship for foster kids to go to like school if they get an XYZ grade? You know, like these kind of Bright Start like programs. I think Michigan has a like if you get a certain GPA and you're in the state of Michigan, you like guarantee to get a scholarship to a Michigan university. Right. I think those types of programs targeted towards foster kids could be uh, relatively popular and fast, and it could be a state legislator could get it done in a month or less. You know, like I think this is the kind of thing that might not even take years. It might be like weeks or months of work to get something done like that. And so I always encourage people who love politics or like and like especially like love politics for this reason, like because they want to change specific things, like help people. There are plenty of ways to help people in politics without ever touching an election.
Right. That's an incredible approach, because it's like you said, if you when you get it seems like when you get into politics you got to cover every topic, right? You've got to somehow every topic's going to come up and you've got to have I remember I was getting letters, how do you feel about this, and it was actually like a quiz, like you answered it and then they published it, and
Yep.
generally they either endorsed you or they did.
Yep.
And then generally I didn't get endorsed was the whole thing. But the
Mhm.
the funny thing about it was I remember President Obama was a fairly popular president, but during his 8 years, Democrats lost 1,200 seats in local government across the country during that 8 years. And I think if you and then they seem to blame the focus on we just Democrats aren't laser focused on general election on local elections. But like you said, if you had people, and now Democrats are saying we want a candidate in every race. But if you had those candidates in every race focused on some things, and they were focused on it because individuals were writing this is what's important, so you got them on your side to push them, that
Mhm.
could change politics in America.
Absolutely. I think that that's a maybe that's I think an appropriate critique of kind of the Democratic Party for the last like 20 or 30 years, is that it got very focused on fundraising at the kind of expense of, and it built a very strong organization, built great messaging, potentially at the expense of solving these fundamental problems, right? Like, so I mean, you see the ACA in healthcare. some bills got passed in education, but we didn't see the the true solutions, right? Like we saw this kind of like you were saying, I think expanding the ACA to cover everyone is not the long-term solution. And kind of everyone knows that it's not the long-term solution. But neither party right now has that long-term solution. I think we might see it. I think what you were saying about universal healthcare, I still think the establishment wing of the Democratic Party has still not fully accepted universal healthcare, and that's why the Democratic Party hasn't pushed for universal healthcare as fully as it could. But neither party is really pushing for a solution. And so I think in these cases, we're not going to get I think the solution has to be either the public pushes one or two of the parties to to one side or the other. I think the Democratic Party is in risk more than actually the Republican Party in that way of actually being replaced, right? I think you've got an example of I think if the Democratic Party gets too far away from its mission of helping the working class, it can be replaced by another party. And this actually happened in England over the last like about 50 years ago. There used to be a liberal party in England, which was like the Democrats, and they were the leading left-wing party. And over time, they stopped serving the working class interest and started serving richer and richer interests, and they got replaced by the Labour Party in England, right? And now there's a Labour Party that is now also starting to fade further and further into the supporting the rich, and now there's a Reform Party that's now trying to steal from the kind of populist wings of both the left and the right in the UK. And so I think the US has that same potential where if the Democrats don't solve the working class problems, those fundamental problems that I talk about in positive politics, they do run the risk of being replaced by a party that truly serves a Labor Party for America like system that truly serves those working class interests. But they're just kind of one leader away from doing the right thing and kind of get solving some of these fundamental problems. I think the same thing is true with Republicans. I think there's going to be 2028, Republicans have to decide who their next leader is going to be after Trump. And it could be very easy to either find someone else named Trump or someone else in this like close circle to kind of replace him and just like keep the same thing running. It's like the classic quote, like generals are always busy winning the last war, right? Like I think that battle that Trump won is that's the last war. Like that kind of negativity of who can insult the other person the most, right? That we're sick of that now, right? And so what I believe is next is positive politics. We're starting to see the first few candidates who are doing that, but the both parties, Republican and Democrats, the ones who pick that up and do it the right way are going to win, and they're going to win long term because and it includes going direct and being independent, like all the positive politics principles. Like it's not just being nice. You also have to like get wins quickly, right? You have to take action. You have to build an audience. You have to do all these things too, but it really starts from those positive fundamentals. Like it doesn't matter like what the either party wants. It's about what are these fundamentals, the healthcare, education, jobs, housing, transparency. How do we solve these fundamental problems so that people can then solve their own problems, the rest of the problems, right? Like that's what I believe is like you are really unlocking people's potential when you solve those problems. Like if you take the jobs, housing, education, healthcare type problems away from people, then they become unlocked to do great things, right? And so that's I think the meta solution in politics. Like if we unlock people, they unlock everything else. Like we now help, we have a much bigger impact than if we were even just helping one person at a time, right? And so I think there's that kind of like it's one thing to give someone a fish, it's one another thing to teach them the fish kind of thing, right? Like a lot of these systems, like if you do it the right way, they become self-sufficient, and if you do them the wrong way, they become entitlements, or they become handouts, or they become even worse, they become wasted money that are is deficits that are never recovered by the country. These systems need to be like if you unlock someone, if you unlock someone's education, you want them to then be so much more successful over the course of their life that they're actually able to give more back to their community, more back to the next generation, even through their taxes, so that that pays for the education for the next generation. And so the investments that the government has to be making, also, we want them to be positive sum. Like that's another version of positive that needs to happen is like we get into this negative sum thing. It's like a $20 million government bill that helps no one but those two people who got the bill passed. That's a negative sum bill. Like we just lost $20 million and those two people gained, right? Anything else? Like a bill that spends money on early childhood education, right? That helps those kids. Those kids end up being successful. That helps the kids' parents. Those parents become more successful potentially, right? That helps the community because like those parents and kids end up like are maybe like better members of the community and more active members of the community then, right? It's like that's a positive sum investment. Like that investment in the childcare of the kid pays off for the community. It's in a positive way. And so I want to push as much of politics in that direction. It's just like we're just trying to figure out what is the positive thing to do and just do it, right? And it doesn't like it maybe takes a less of the power away from some of these brands like the parties and more of the power to the people and the policies and what we actually want to get done. And so that's what positive politics is arguing. I think the book is going to be just the start of it. I want the next step for me is can I help people? Can I build like an accelerator like program to help people get into politics? I went through a program like this called Y Combinator in San Francisco area, and it's a fascinating program, right? They nowadays they take over 20,000 applications from around the world for like a couple hundred spots, where they actually now they invest $500,000 per company, and this could be anything. It'd be like three kids from India or like five family members from Missouri, like, and they're like coming up with some like any startup, but and out of those 20,000, they pick these 200 startups that they think are going to be excellent and they like bring them to America and they give them their first 500K in funding and they give them all this help and like in 12 weeks they get them ready to pitch hundreds of investors and these companies are then off and running and like companies like Reddit and Airbnb have come like Dropbox have come from Y Combinator and it's just an amazing program. I went through it 10 years ago in 2015 and I've always thought
Really?
that yeah, it's a fascinating program. Back in my day, we only got $100,000 checks. They've definitely increased their stature since then. But fascinating program. It is that model for politics would be incredible. I've been thinking about it for 10 years and I that's what I would love positive politics to finally end up with is a positive politics accelerator where we do the like Y Combinator for politics. We help you raise that first 100K. Y Combinator started the first few classes only got 20K. And like the startup is like one or two kids right out of college or even dropping out of college, and that 20K went a long way. And what Y Combinator found is that that early support and that early funding, it multiplies. It's like because Y Combinator believes in you, then like other these like VCs, these other investors started figuring it out. They're like, like Y Combinator looks at thousands of startups to pick these 100 best ones. I'm gonna go to their demo day and just watch the 100 best startups. And so it becomes like the stamp of approval. So now you're in Y Combinator. Now these investors are looking at you, and now you might be able to raise $1 million or 5 million or 10 million and really build the thing you want to build because you went through Y Combinator. And so this like Y Combinator for politics is something that I've been thinking about for a long time. And I think positive politics could absolutely be that entry to it. And so the last chapter of positive politics talks about the positive politics accelerator. Like what I want to do next is this accelerator of helping people get into politics. And like I said, it's not just about running, it's about getting into politics in any way you can. And I think if we get hundreds, ideally, thousands of people into politics in this way, that I think could be my biggest way of changing the world in a positive way. And so to me, that's the one of the biggest things I could be doing in politics right now.
Well, Y Combinator is an incredible example of exactly what you just said, how we could change politics in a positive way. Because one of the things I talked about is kids are often unable to get a student college loan. And I've always said, why can't they necessarily trade that for a student small business loan?
Yeah.
And a Y Combinator, and like you said, or a student's political career loan to begin a platform. And
Yep.
and and now I never even knew about Y Combinator. You were a part of the program, like and you've had some incredible success, and you're a writer, and you're also a political activist, basically. And so that's what we want to create is we want to get out of the idea that you have to have a certain family name to be in politics. I remember when Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton were running against each other, they stopped using the last names because people were tired of the dynasty. So you saw vote Jeb, vote Hill, or
Yeah.
vote Hillary, because the Clinton Bush thing was just, but we're still in that rut. We're still in that rut. We're still in the era of basically it's just the pedigree that gets elected to office. And so we need that Y Combinator, getting all sorts of people involved in politics and creating, like you said, one, two, three things that are significantly important, not necessarily the whole gamut of things. Representatives in the House of Representatives, they leave the building, they leave the Capitol building, and they go across the street to a rented building because you can't raise money on federally owned property.
Mhm.
And all they do is work the phones. So
Yeah.
they'll get a call from a pharmaceutical company, $10,000 EpiPen, and you got $1 million in your campaign fund. And okay, I'll vote for that $10,000 EpiPen then.
Yeah, there's a
Okay,
whole
and
like country club looking building right next to the Capitol, right? And like each party has one, right? And they like these are and they also they meet each other and like there's all these ways where the some of those things are true, like in the sense of like this the money coming in, flowing in from the corporations is definitely real. Like I've definitely seen some of those things. There are smoke-filled rooms. Like those are real, like parts of Congress, those back rooms really do smell like cigar smoke. All right, like it
yeah,
reeks back there. But I would say that the a lot of the politics is also like simpler than you think, right? Like it's like the it's also like if you kind of maybe take the focus away from the federal and kind of go back to kind of some of the state and local stuff, that's one way to get really involved in politics and get impact quickly. And then I think it's the other thing we're going to find out is that some of these bills I think could be like we can fight the campaign finance. Like there are ways that campaign finance can be fixed. So McCain-Feingold is actually their campaign finance act was actually the one that created the original I'm so and so and I paid for this ad that message, the paid for messaging, that was a requirement of McCain-Feingold. And there were actually a lot of other requirements of McCain-Feingold, dark money restrictions that actually Citizens United blocked. They actually called Citizens United blocked the 2002 McCain-Feingold. Certain parts of the act were blocked, but then other parts of the act, like the Stand by Your Act, that part of the act were actually allowed to stay. I think some of those could be brought back. I think we could. There are bills that could maybe not block spending, so you might not be able to block dark money spending entirely, but you might actually require it to be public and open, right? So like turn it into if we can't block the dark money completely, can we actually make it more transparent? That's I think a solution. But I think the potentially biggest solution is just these politicians who build their direct audience. They go direct. They have an ability to be independent from their parties. If you can have your own audience and your own money, you can go a long way. And I think that that's something that I think Y Combinator starts to teach a lot is there's a lot of before Y Combinator, the other way that used to raise money for startups is like people used to like know their MBA buddies and like they used to raise like $5 or $10 million to start a business. And that would use, and then you'd like hire a bunch of people and it was like a bunch of MBAs ran these startups. Because that you needed the skill of fundraising was like the first skill you needed. Otherwise you wouldn't even get started. And Y Combinator kind of turned that on its head. They were like, well, we're just going to start you with even 20,000 to start. But like if you come in and in 12 weeks you get something done, because that's like that 12-week program, and then you're going to pitch to investors. And in that 12 weeks, like every Tuesday, you like meet for dinner with the whole class and like you tell everyone else what you did that week. And it's like there's a pressure to like getting stuff done as quickly
peer
as possible.
pressure.
Yeah, there's a good
Yeah,
peer pressure in that
yeah, yeah.
environment. Because these are some of the most ambitious people in the world, like all in the same room all of a sudden. And that pushes you like in 12 weeks to get things done. And so I think that version of politics would be amazing. It's like, hey, can I like take a class of 10 people And it's like in 12 weeks, like what's the most you can get done in politics? And like you're gonna in 12 weeks, let's pitch you to like a group of 150 people and go raise money from these people and like get the thing done. But like it might be in 12 weeks or less, like you've actually passed a bill. The same way like some of these startups, like in 12 weeks, they have like paying customers and the revenue and like the business is going and like they have a graph of revenue taking off and like they just started the business like 7 weeks ago because they take 4 weeks to start it and like 1 week to get it's incredible. It's like like week 12 what some of these companies have done. Some of them have even changed their idea within the 12 weeks. They've like pivoted the company entirely, like come up with a new idea, like new name, new everything, and like launch a new business within that 12 weeks. And so a program like that for politics would be absolutely incredible. And especially if you're flexible enough to where you don't have to run for something, you can just get straight into politics and get something done.
So how was your experience at Y Combinator? What did you do? What did you pitch? Or did you pitch or you just went through the
Yeah, yeah.
course?
So I went through the program with my startup Labdoor. So Labdoor is doing great. So Labdoor is the independent alternative to the FDA. We test vitamins, supplements, multivitamins, fish oil, protein powders, creatine, even like CBD and things like that. And we can test the purity and the accuracy of all the products, whether a product has any heavy metals in it. We can even test for like microplastics and all these different other factors in these products, and then we can look at the accuracy of the label. Like, is when a protein powder says that it's 30 grams of protein, is it actually 20? And how long are they? Like, we can actually prove that one way or the other. If a fish oil is fresh versus rancid, we can prove it. Like you don't have to pop open a pill or like do all these kind of weird tests to figure it out. Like, if we've done the testing and we can prove the product is fresh or not. And so we built labdoor.com, a whole website and marketplace. Tens of millions of people have used it over the years. And you can still go and figure out like I still used to like what magnesium product to use when I like for sleep. Like you search the magnesium rankings, you figure out the best product by quality or value, and you buy it. And like there are links to buy it. The business runs that way. It's like the link to Amazon, you get a commission no matter what product we buy. And it's all kind of free to the consumer, right? Like the labdoor.com is free and it works, right? Like if it actually ends up pushing more sales to the better products, right? And so if you test like if you're an A grade product on Labdoor, your sales go up, right? And so it actually like it rewards even like small brands that might not be as popular or not as well known. If they rate a on Labdoor, they actually could increase their sales and find new customers that they would never find otherwise. So that's a kind of a cool example of the FDA does not test supplements, right? They don't do pre-market testing of supplements, so it's a something that the government is not doing, and it's something that a startup was able to solve. And now it's global. We do testing. We have Labdoor certifications on products in India and Brazil and all over the world. And so now there's actually companies will actually put the Labdoor certification on their physical products as well. And so yeah, that was a huge part of my life for the last 10 years of kind of making Labrador successful and that whole process, even like moving to San Francisco to go and going through the Y Combinator program, all these different things has been was an amazing experience and has led me to think through kind of how do we do that. I think there's Y Combinator is still doing a great job doing that for startups, but I think it's like it's just no one really tries to do that for politics. Like I have not seen someone really go take a shot at this Y Combinator for politics problem, which I think is kind of could be one of the biggest potential solutions in politics in
I
the world.
absolutely love it. And you are thinking about doing it, right? You are putting it together in a
Yeah,
sense.
exactly. So I'm writing about it, I'm organizing it. I'm just starting to put together the materials to what we'd have to pitch for funders and things like that. But really it's about that 1, 2, 3 key blog posts and the book itself, right? Like the book explains what I want to do. And sometimes it takes those types of things. Like you want to be, sometimes people get that, you earn that trust through the writing, talking, telling the stories. You want to be the leader to do that. And this is the number one thing I want to do is this accelerator.
This would be huge because this is really what we need. And like I said, I think the time is now because I give that credit to Donald Trump. We have got more people engaged in politics than ever before. People keep saying, "How do we have 160 million people voting in presidential elections?" Because of Donald Trump. People are significantly engaged now. And then you got White Combinator where people are going to start saying, "You know what? Y Combinator, but in politics, you know what? I want to be a part. I want to pitch this to Y Combinator. I guess you would say judges, maybe. I want to be the guy that gets picked by them, so I can continue my 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 sense of mission in politics. And my sense of mission only be maybe three things. Like my biggest thing is that the kids are timing out of foster care.
Yeah.
Recently read about an actor that funded a small village for kids to have a place to stay after 18. And I was like, wow. And there's foster parents. And there is the Hershey School, which essentially does the same thing. They have parents, counselors on property, giving these kids guidance on day-to-day life, and that's a big thing that we need to. And the return on investment would be huge because a lot of these kids, when they get into that troublesome time where they're 18, they got nowhere to go. They come to the realization that they can sell their bodies. It's the only really thing they have to trade over and above their older competition. They get into crime. If you reduce that, you've reduced human trafficking, you've reduced crime. You're going to get a huge return on investment.
It's huge, and it's huge. Obviously, not just huge for the families and these individuals, but huge for the society and the community as well, right?
The community, yeah.
Like everyone benefits, and so I think one big thing, one great way to kind of get impact, I think, is to find these stories. Like if you find nonprofits or other states, success stories. I like it's amazing how much of this still comes down to storytelling, right? And whether it's videos or writing, if you can tell stories of like XYZ nonprofit for, 10K per kid or, XK per kid is able to do this program. Like it works like in this way, or like this state does it this way, or this city does it this way. And then you can actually pitch it to your city or your state. The success stories are a huge way that politicians will change their mind. If you can be like, actually, this program, and look at the success stories, and look at this, like, and you can meet these people, and like you can talk to them if you want to, like, let me get you on a Zoom with one of the adults who graduated from one of these programs, right? Like, if they can talk to them, like, it changes their perspective very quickly. And so I think you've got a really cool opportunity with this specific issue of foster care and kind of the transitioning of kind of 18 plus. I'm like imagining that like is there like a equivalent of college for foster care and like what is that graduation, like where do they graduate to, is it's so important, and I think it's so you're so passionate about it. It's something that I think you could get done. Like I'd love to see it and I'd love to help you do
I
it.
think I'm going to work on it more and more and more and more now that I got, you just got me very motivated. When
Awesome.
you talk about what is 50% of kids timing out of foster care are never gainfully employed in their life. That is a real figure.
Hmm.
So right there you've got this understanding of how real the problem is when you think of these kids just bouncing around from restaurant kitchen to restaurant kitchen, and really getting nowhere. And I hate to use restaurant kitchen but I've always been a restaurant guy, so that's the first thing that came to my mind. Um, but I am definitely committed to that. I've always talked about it on all the podcasts, and the amount of enthusiasm, the amount of people that want to. When I talk to people on this podcast, that kind of white comment, when you create that, it's something I'm going to pitch too, that you get with these, see if you can get with Neil and see if you can be a part of his funding and his organization, because we need more average people in governing and
Hmm.
government. That was the intention of our founding fathers. Was the House of Representatives was intended to be concerned community citizens going to Washington for 2 years and bringing their community concerns to Washington, and then coming home back to their businesses, their farms, their whatever, their local businesses. And we've gotten past that. Like we said, we just identified so many ways that we've gotten past that: the fundraising and the and the politics and the dark money. That's really a big issue because it really speaks for a lot. It really gets the dark money gets a lot done, and nothing really positive for the people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's too much. I think dark money, I think, is one of the biggest factors that is skewing the election side of it. I think and there's ways to fight it, and I think that's what I think fighting it through the corruption, fighting it through the dark money is one of the biggest ones. Uh, but I think the next part of it is just how can you do things without money? Like I think the biggest thing that is just you can do so much in politics with actually very little money. And sometimes it's just about kind of in you want to find the people who actually have the right incentives and influence them, right? It's like you can actually convince one politician first and convince them that they need to do something, and then convince another politician, and actually kind of convincing the politicians to change their minds actually might be a more powerful way to get into politics than running yourself. And also, like, if you run yourself, the earliest election might be, a year from now or something like that. Like, there might be 12 bills you could pass between now and then, right? Like, I think there's so many valuable ways to just get in the game now. And so I think that is, I think a huge way where I think that this test of let's just in 2026, like next year, that's like a big motivation for me is like this year for me, it was like, I said November 11th, I'm going to publish this book. I worked all year on it and I got it done. And I'm very proud of all the stories and kind of really packing it with all. Uh, I think that the stories are what really inspire people. It's like real examples of real people that maybe you've never heard of, but that have done really cool things, right? That's I think what's inspiring. And then especially like people who maybe got huge things done in politics without ever getting elected for office. I think those are also very exciting. And so now that that's done, I kind of want to. The next thing that I hear, like I had a kind of a cynical former politician that I talked to. I won't name their name, but they like actually said, they were like, oh, you like we don't need another pundit like telling us to be positive. Like come, like what is it like? What are you guys gonna do? Tell me what you guys are gonna do. I was like, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna get start with 10 people and we're gonna get them into politics and we're gonna have them start changing issues one bill at a time, and then we're gonna solve it. And he's like, great, come find me when you do it. I'm like, okay, fine, let's do it. Like I think that's the case. I think we need to then the two things to do are like one, write the book. Like if I hadn't really explained it detailed way what I'm doing, if I had just gone straight to doing it, I think I would have had the other problem. It's like, well, what are the details? What are the fundamentals? What are you going to fight for? What does positive politics mean? I now have a book very clearly that says this is what positive politics means. Uh, Now it's like, what's positive politics going to do? It's going to help people get into politics, right? It's going to help people through this accelerator. Let's do it. I'm just like very excited to do it. And I think Y Combinator had this like their first class was just the four founders and like 10 to 15 founders. And that initial group had Sam Altman, it had Alexis Ohanian, the Reddit founder, it had Drew Houston, the Dropbox founder. Like it had a very powerful group of
Wow.
founders who are now extremely successful that were
And
all in that first class. That was
you're bas
in that very first class. Like that was the what I think 2005 class. Right. And so I was in the 2015 class.
so that was 10 years
And
later.
yeah, 10 years later. And now I think a couple companies in my class went public as well, and you keep seeing kind of this thing growing, but it has that kind of we always talk about it, is like if you thought about the 300 to 500 founders in that program even now in a given year, it's kind of like the same kind of selection bias is like getting selected to the NBA or something. Like these are the 500 founders this year who got selected, right? But that doesn't mean that those all 500 become successful, right? Like a lot of them fall off the wayside, and even within that 500 you see a lot of dynamics of who's elite, who's truly elite versus who's not, like who gets to that level and falls off quickly. It's fascinating, right? And so you learn so much from being in that pressure cooker and that kind of, and like having all those peers and having all those ambitious people around you. And so that for politics would be incredible. And so I think starting small, like it started with kind of Paul Graham's, I think he wrote 20K checks out of his own pocket, I think, for those first 10 companies. That's all it took to get that thing started. It might be even like less money to get this thing started. But it's just like, what it'll take to get 10 people into politics. Like these bills might not cost a lot of money. Like we might not even have to get everyone running for office. So we don't have to fund like huge elections right away. We might just have to, it just might be enough to get these people going to actually push bills and push legislation and write, sit and write and record videos and just push their issues and build an audience. It's just going direct and getting work done. And so I think what's nice about positive politics is it's just like it's a very simple. It's like do the work, spread the word. It's like very, very simple stuff. Like it's not complicated. But I think people have made politics very complicated because they're kind of first solving the money problem, and then kind of everything else goes out after that.
Yeah, the sense is that you need the money to get started. And that's the incredible thing about this book, Positive Politics, which I haven't read yet, but I am ordering it immediately
Oh,
and I really want to read it. I'm really
thank you.
excited about it. And I'm also excited about the Michigan Campaign Finance Network that you started. And then you said about and then you also started the Lab Door. I mean, it's incredible what you've accomplished, and at a young age, it's incredible. And so I really can see this happening with the politics on as far as Y Combinator happening
Absolutely.
next.
Thank you.
And so I am very grateful to have you on the show. I want to do it again. Can we do it again down the road and
Yeah,
talk
we should
about
talk
where you're
again
at?
soon.
Where we talk about where you're at on Y Combinator, and then
Yeah,
I'll
my
go
goal
ahead.
is next summer. So we're talking in December of 2025. Yeah, my goal is summer 26. Can we get that first 10 people through a class? And then maybe by the end of it, can we do like a 1 day event where maybe 100 plus people show up and they pitch this and we can try to launch some political careers and see what we can get done.
That would be incredible. That would be incredible. So Neil Thaneder, uh,
And
how do you say it?
Thanedar.
Senator. Okay, thank you. I should have asked that when we before we first.
No
Neil
worries.
Senator, and then executive director of Michigan Campaigns Finance, and the author of Positive Politics, and the book sounds incredible. The organization sounds incredible. I'm really
Thank you.
excited about the next step, and also um, Labdoor sounds incredible. So I'm going on that website next to
Awesome.
check that out, and then I'm really gonna get with you. I want to stay focused on where, and I'm going to stay focused on my sense of mission about
Yeah.
getting a bill passed just here in Florida, locally even, where we get some of these kids
Yeah.
in a place where they can call home for the next 4 years of their life after they time out from foster care, where we just get the momentum started. Not necessarily a $1 billion university, just a
Yeah.
small place, a small community.
Exactly. This is a local or state issue that you can definitely solve in 6 months or less. So next time we
Wow.
talk, hopefully we can be talking about some more successes.
That sounds great. Thank you, Neil. Thank you so
Awesome.
much. We're going to talk
Awesome.
soon. So if you want, tell us about how you get the book too before we go.
Yeah,
Is it on
so
Amazon
yeah,
or
so it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, positivepoliticsbook.com if you want to get all the links from there. And yeah, we've got a an ebook, hardcover, paperback. It's really I will be recording an audiobook really soon, so that should be out in a couple months. And yeah, it just check out Positive Politics, share it with if there's anyone in your life who you think should get into politics, share Positive Politics with them. That I think is one of the best ways that Positive Politics is going to get to the right people is people who care about politics and who know their friends who care about politics and their family members who truly care. Sharing the book with your friends and family who truly care is incredibly important.
I'm going to share the book with everybody on my podcast as well. So
Awesome.
Neil
Thank you.
Senator, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Neil. Thank you for
Awesome.
joining us. It's been a
Awesome.
pleasure. It's been my honor to have you on this
Awesome.
podcast. Thank you
Yeah,
so
this has been
much,
so much
Neil.
fun.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, let's talk later. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I'm going to be emailing you, and we're going to set this up again.
Happy to help. All
Thank you,
right, bye.
sir.